Hi, this is Python 101, session number 3. We're going to talk about Python strings today, right? And to Python strings topic, we have two sessions. And the two sessions are, we're dedicating two sessions because we're going to talk about other things as well. So let's just sort the agenda first, and then we'll get going. All right, let's begin. So we're going to talk about strings. Actually, just give me a second. I don't know what's going on with my... Let's just use this. Okay, yeah. So we're going to talk about strings today, and in the context of strings, we'll also talk about things like variables. So, what are variables? How are they stored in the memory? We're going to talk about sequences, some general properties of sequences, right? And we're going to talk about string-specific uh, library (str) module, and finally some built-ins. So the things that we're going to talk about are going to be pretty generic for other sequences as well. Okay? And let's get started on these things. A quick recap from the previous session. In the previous session, we wrote our first program. Right? We looked at how the program is executed by running a .py file. That was number one. And then by running on shell, like in an interpreter shell, you can run Python code statement by statement. You can write whatever you want and Python will respond back with an answer. And third is by importing modules. Those are the three things that we saw, although I did not focus on the third one yet. That's fine. This we skipped, but we'll need some more understanding to understand this part. Then we looked at how to write a function, a very basic bare body function in which we define a function and then we put a return value in the function to get an answer back. And we looked at print statements. Print was the first built-in that we looked in. Okay, so built-in is something that is provided by default in your Python program, and then you don't have to, you can just call them without importing anything really. And we looked at print, help, and dir, dir function. That was the content of previous session. Now let's look at strings. So let's begin with strings quickly. What are strings? Strings are ordered collection of characters. Ordered collection of characters. So a collection is any entity that can hold multiple multiple units of information. So a string is a collection, an array is a collection, a hash map is a collection. So string is basically a collection, and it's an ordered collection. An ordered collection means that the relative order of the entities in that collection is preserved. So suppose I have a string which is, let's say, Frodo. Okay. And in this string, what will happen is the left to right order of these characters will remain preserved as we move in the program, right? So that means that is what ordered term means. There are some collections in Python in which this order is not necessarily preserved. You may store information in one order and it may be stored in another order. Okay, and we'll see those as well. So that is an ordered collection. And ordered collection also are referred to as by another name, which is sequence. Okay. So strings are basically sequence, and then there are certain operations that you can do on sequences or ordered collections, which are applicable to pretty much all the sequences. Okay. So yep, string is an ordered collection of characters. Now let's create some strings and let's start playing around with the strings to really understand. For doing this, I'm going to start with my Python shell. Okay, and don't worry about following me. Every few minutes, every 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I'm gonna take a quick break and I'm gonna give you a chance to try whatever I'm doing right now. So that's my terminal. Let's begin with the strings. Strings, string variable. What you do is you put any type of character inside a quote that becomes a string. For example, this A is a string, or the whole, let's say my name. This is a string. Right? This is a collection of characters. You can assign this to a variable. For example, you can say something like name equals that, and that becomes the string variable. Okay. Once again, notice we are not defining any specific type. The Python automatically understands the type information. And in the next very line, we are able to say things like name equals to 5. That is fine. So there is no fixed binding of the object to the name. Okay, the names are just pointing to some kind of a object. And we're going to talk about this in detail today. Right? So let's go back. Name equals to Himanshu Sharma. That's the string. Now let's begin with the initialization. Right? Strings can be created by single quotes. For example, you can write like this Mars, or by double quotes. You can write, say, Saturn. They are same thing. Or even by triple quotes, like this. You can write Jupiter like this. Now, what is the difference? Well, there is literally no difference between the first two types. Okay, keep you can interchange it. There's literally no difference. So you can the advantage of keeping this scheme is that you can embed one type of code into the other code. So you can say, for example, uh, let's create a variable line, and line is something like I am Himanshu, like that. So notice that I'm able to put one type of code inside the another code, and Python is intelligent enough to understand that. Then you can just write line and it will be printed, or you can write print line. So that is that's what you can do, and you can do the other way as well. I can define another line, line 2 equals to, it's a single quotes, and I'm saying I said something like let's go, and that's also fine. So as long as the order is same, you're good. Now, if you want to embed same type of things, then you have to use the escaping character. So if you want to write line equals to, let's say something like I am Himanshu, then this is going to be a problem. And the problem comes here. Python thinks that at this point the string has ended, and this is some garbage here, which needs to be fixed. Now, if you explicitly want to do that and you want to interpret this quote as a string character and not as the ending of the string, then you have to use a backslash like this, and then you're fine. All right, with this, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to try this out, and then we'll move forward. All right, let's get started again. And let's look at the triple quote. Okay, the triple quote strings are multi-line strings. Essentially, what you can do is you can say something like, let's say, line equals to quote, quote, quote. This is a multi-line string, quote, quote, quote. And you can also do the similar thing with the double quotes. It doesn't have to be single quoted triple quotes. So you can use double quotes for that as well. And you can say, this is another line. And this is also fine. Now, when you look at line, what you will notice is that Python has already put a backslash n in appropriate places where the enter has been placed, where the new line is supposed to be. So when you print it, you will get the correct behavior. Similarly, you can do print line 2, correct behavior. So that's the multi-line string. So that's the defining part. When you define a string, you're saying you can use a single quote, double quote, triple quote, and you can use one type of quote within the other type of quote. Okay. So after defining, let's use something here. I'm going to define a variable x, and x is, let's say, Frodo, right? And I'm going to use a built-in function called len on it. Len x equals to 5. Can anybody guess what this len function does?
Provides the
Length
length
of the
of
variable.
characters.
Right. So it gives you the number of items that are present.
Len of the character.
Yeah, the number of items that are present in that collection, in that sequence, is what is provided by the len built-in. So Python has a page for all the built-ins. Okay, if you just do Python built-ins, you will come to basically a page which lists all the built-in functions that are provided to you. Okay, and you can understand what these are by using the help function, or you can just go to the documentation right here. It's on the page. But what you will notice is that there is a len built in somewhere here. Here you go. That's len built in. Gives you the number of items that are inside a collection, essentially. Now, we're going to look at other built-ins as well, but as I mentioned, string is a collection, and anything else that is a collection, len will continue to apply on that as well. So if you have, let's say, some kind of a list, let's say 1, 2, 3, and then you do len of L, you're good. You'll continue. It will continue to work. Okay, so that's the built-in function called len. Now let's talk about some string operations and use len to do some work. Okay, so the first string operation that we're going to talk about is concatenation of two strings. Suppose you have two strings, okay? X is equals to Frodo and Y equals to, let's say, Baggins. If you want to concatenate these two strings, that is, if you want to make this into one string, what you can do is you can write X plus Y, and that makes that into a single string. Okay, so that's the concatenation operation on a string. Now, if let's say you wanted to write this and you wanted to add a space in between, then what you could do is you could have created another string with just a space. So you could just write X plus an empty space plus Y, and you get Frodo Baggins with the space in it. It's a very basic operation. We use it a lot. Okay. That's concatenation. You have in string and in every single sequence, you have multiplication as well. And this will be used later on. I mean, it's not, you will not understand the use at the moment, but essentially, if you have, let's say, if you write x multiplied by 10, then essentially the string is repeated 10 times. One of the important property to understand here is that whenever you write this operation, right, x plus y or x plus like x multiplied by 10, the original string is not changed. The x and y will remain same. And that will be the case pretty much with all of the operations on string. Okay. The x and y, the original strings will remain same. The operations will return a new string. You can capture that string in some other string. You can say something like z equals to x plus y, and then z is Frodo Baggins. But x and y will remain the same. Right? I'm going to give you 1 minute maybe. Just quickly try out the concatenation and multiplication if you want to.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have different words like fraud and the bargain, right? I have
Mhm.
I have fraud Saturn.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, because you have other things in your variables. You might have created a variable with that Saturn name. So when you're adding, it becomes that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, Hi, Himanshu.
Hey,
Hi. So, how do we put a space between that x into 10, like the multiplication, when you're repeating the same thing?
that's a good question. Think about it. How can you put space between this? With,
So,
let's say, if you,
I tried using separate SEP using the single quotes, but it doesn't give me anything.
SEPs is specifically for print. When you're creating a new string, you will have to use something of a string function, right? So suppose you create x plus space,
Okay.
then this creates a Frodo and space, right? And if you then
Right.
multiply this by 10, you'll be able to create space. But once again, you have to be careful. If you write this, what would be the output?
Hmm.
Do you get what's happening here? Space is multiplied by 10 and x plus space, which is multiplied by 10. So you'll have to write something like a bracket here, a parenthesis here. It becomes like that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right, so let's go here. I'm gonna start my IDE, and I'm going to define a new module here. And this module is going to be called, hang on, okay, yeah, mod1.py. So in this function, in this module, I'm going to write a function. Okay, the function is called greet. And every time you call greet, the there's a message that's going to be printed, and that message is going to be, let's say, my name, and then we end the function. Okay, we don't need to add a return. If you don't add return, then essentially a default return is put in place. So that's the function. If I call it, come on, let's call this function, and what will happen is you will get a print statement. If you call it again, another print statement, like that. Now suppose that I want to change this function. Okay, I want to, into this function, I want to pass the variable, like how we were doing in the previous session as well. We want to pass a variable, and we want to use that variable to say hello with that variable. Okay, so if I say greet, let's say, once again, let's say we say greet whatever Bilbo, then it should be hello Bilbo. And if we say something else, then it should be Himanshu. Okay. So how can we do that? What we can do is we can create a variable, like an argument for the function. We can call it, let's say, name. Okay. And then we can say whatever the result is, result equals to hello plus name. I'm adding a space because we need a space. And then we can just return and we can just print the result. Or if we want to just get rid of all of this and just, we don't want two lines, we can just write print here and print this thing like this. Now when you call this function, you will get string concatenated like this. It's a pretty simple example, but just wanted to get this out of the way.
Sorry, please, can you explain this again? Because I'm not really getting it. So when you define the variable, but after the double punctuation mark, there's nothing beside it. So how does it know it's gonna be Bilbo?
So this, when you say greet Bilbo, essentially the Bilbo gets passed here, right? That name is Bilbo now. So when you say name here,
Okay.
that is Bilbo,
Okay.
right? That's how the function works.
Okay. So does that mean you can put anything in the that means the word greet can be anything? So what if it was a number that you wanted to put in there? Can you just write greet parentheses number?
So that's a good question. Let's try this out first on the terminal. Okay, so suppose I do Himanshu plus 5. Then you're going to get an error. And the error will be a type error. And that is that the only concatenation that can happen is between a string and a string, not a string and an int. So that's what the error is. When you read the error, you go from back, from the lowest point here. You say type error can only concatenate string to string and not int. And then it tells you exactly where the problem is. So if I come here and I say again, greet, let's say 500, and I run this, then this becomes a problem. And this tells you where the problem is. When you click it, it will tell you that this line is throwing the error. And it was called by this line. So you cannot add a string to a number. Okay, and that brings to the next logical segment where we're going to talk about few more built-ins. Okay, so we're going to look into what is called casting. So this is what I was coming to when I was writing that function. Casting. Python can, all the programming languages actually can cast one type of object into another type of object. Okay, and Python can do that if it can be done, right? If you think that this can be done, then most likely Python will be able to achieve that goal. But if the two objects are not correlated, then there'll be a problem. So there is a built-in function called str. Okay, and sorry, this str is different, but yeah, there's a built-in function called str. This str function can essentially convert anything to a string. So suppose if I pass 5 to it, 5 is a number, it turns it into a 5 string. Okay, and if you have, let's say, str of something else, maybe let's try something that cannot be converted to a string. So suppose you have, this is okay. I mean, this is okay. So let's just say, let's pass something that is, first of all, not defined. Let's say h. Then you're going to get an error because h is a variable which is not defined yet. Or if you have a custom object, then it will not work. But other things will work. For example, we defined a list earlier, which is this. If you do str of that list, then that list will be converted to one string like this. So in the previous function, what we can also do is we can, instead of just calling on name, we can make sure that this is string format. We can just add str to it. Once we add str to this and we run this, Python will convert the 500 to string and you will get the answer. And string can anyway be converted to string, so that's perfectly fine. Similarly, there is another built-in, which is called int. Int can convert any string to integer if it's possible. Okay, suppose you have a string 5. Then it will be able to convert it back to 5. But if you have something that doesn't make sense, let's say 51, oh, that does make sense. You have, let's say, ABC. Then it becomes a problem. So all of these things are best effort. So whatever can be converted will be converted. Once again, at this point, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to try this out.
A question in Funny, I was wondering if there's a way to do a return without having it process what you have on the line.
What do you mean by that statement?
Meaning, I'm not sure, I can't, when you were doing earlier and you were sort of doing a line wrap and showing how the hard return was inserted, when I try to do that in the shell window, at least, it's just trying to process what I have on the single line and not allowing me to enter more than one line.
Yeah. On shell, you cannot enter more than one line. You will not be able to do that.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Are there numbers that can be turned into strings like pi?
So the question is, can the numbers like pi be turned into strings? So let's look at it. I don't know. I mean, I assume what you're looking for is the real value of pi. So if the number is just 3.14, yes, it will be converted to string. I don't see that as a problem. That is okay. But let's convert math.py. Yeah, looks to be okay. I mean, you can do that. All right, so what I would like to do now, okay, is let's get some practice done. Okay, so I want you to, let's solve some problems, okay, as we go along. And these problems are hosted on a website called Coding Bat, which is written by a Stanford professor. And let's go there. And I'm going to send you the link right now, okay? This is called codingbat.com. I'm going to send you this link on Discord in a second. Actually, let me resend this. It needs to be Python. Okay. So once you land on Coding Bat, you go to the Python tab. And then there is a module called string1. You can go to that module. Now, once again, about this website is by Professor Nick Perlante. He's a professor in Stanford, and this has been written for some practicing. So I use it for some practice for the classes. Okay. If you're there, so first of all, let's look at the first example and let me show you how this works. It has it has a small practice problems. So you're given a function and you have to achieve some task. The first function, for example, here is hello name. And let's look at the task. So given a string Bob, return the greeting of the form, hello Bob. So you'll be given a variable and you have to return an answer of this form, this string form. Okay, let me do this one and then I can give you more. So what we need to return is here is hello and then a space and then plus name. This is just like the one that we solved. And you can just return that statement. Now when I run this, look what will happen. It's going to fail. So when I hit go here, the output is here and you'll see that a bunch of all the cases are failing here. And the reason they are failing is because there is a missing exclamation point. Okay, so I need that exclamation point here as well. So it shows you that this was expected, this is what it got, and this is a failure. Otherwise, this would be green and there'll be like a tick mark or an OK sign here. Okay, so if you're already here, why don't you guys attempt this problem? And then you can put your solution on Discord.
I have not.
Let's resume recording. Okay, now we have looked at, so far we have looked at what? We have looked at concatenation, multiplication, and built-in function len, and some practice problems. We also looked at the built-in function string, str, and int. Now let's look at some more sequence operations. Okay, let's look at the first operation called indexing. Suppose you have a string. Let's write a string here. Suppose you have a string and that string is Saturn. Okay, suppose this is the string like that, quotes. Then how this is stored in memory is that there is some object, whatever, but then each item of that object can be accessed. Okay, and how it can be accessed is via an index. The very first item gets the index of 0. The next item is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if I want to get the very first or second item of the collection, I can just write the name of the variable and then use the square brackets and the index, whatever index I want to obtain. So if I write x of 0, I will get s back. Let's try this out on terminal real quick. Suppose you have a string called Saturn. You write x of 0, you will get s. Okay. And if you write x of 5, sorry, my mistake, x of 5, you will get n back. Right? So this n is the last number with 5 index.
Question. So would
Yes.
this return a substring or does it return just one element of that object?
It returns one element of that object at the moment. It just indexing like this will return one element. Okay.
Thanks.
If I write x of 10, okay, that's important. Let's look at this. If you have x and you write x of 10, then you will run into a problem. There's something called index error. Why is that index error is happening is because this collection here, the string collection, doesn't have 10 elements. So you're trying to access something which is outside the bounds of this collection. So you're saying that you get index error and you say the index used is out of range. So you have to be careful, okay? And this error, you'll always have to be careful. Whenever you use any collection and you're trying to index it, you have to make sure that that index exists first. Otherwise, you will run into this index error and your program will terminate at that point. So that's the indexing. Suppose I want to write a function. Okay, let's go back to Thony. And let's get rid of this. Suppose I want to write a function called last, and it takes a string as an argument. Okay, and I'm saying return the last character in the string. Suppose this function returns the last character in the string, okay? And I'm going to call it, let's say, last with something, let's say Saturn. Then n needs to come back. Then how will we code this? So if, for example, if this was the case, if the input was hard coded, we would know the length of the string and we would just say, okay, if the string is whatever, we can just write the string down.
Can use length.
Yeah, we can write the string down, let's say Mars, we can just write down the string indexes and we can get the last index like that. But how will we get the index of the last element if we don't know the length of the variable to begin with? Any guesses?
Length of x minus 1.
Yeah. Somebody also said in advance. So if you look at this, if you have a string Saturn, s equals to, let's say, Saturn, then len of s will give you the length of the string. And if you do len of s minus 1, you get the last character. So you can just do len of s minus 1, and essentially you will get the last character of the string. So you can just write s of len of s. Actually, let's write it more clearer. I'm just going to write index equals to len of s minus 1 and s of index. You can just return that. Then I can just print it. And you can run it. Okay, you get n back. There are some edge cases. We'll talk about it in a second. But essentially, you can do that. But you can also do something else, okay? Python has something called reverse indexing. Let's look at the reverse indexing real quick. So when you create a string object or any sequence, apart from the indexing from the front, Python also creates a indexing from the back. So there's also minus indexing like this: -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, and -6. So instead of having to write this whole thing, len of s minus 1, and writing like s of len of s minus 1, you can essentially write s of -1, which is pretty good. It works. I mean, it's really concise. It's pretty clever. If somebody tells you, okay, give me the second last element of the string, second last character of the string, you can just write s of -2, and you get the second last character in the string. Okay, it's pretty intuitive as well. The only important thing to understand is that 0 is reserved for the very first character, and -1 is the last character. And the indexing works here as well. So for example, in the case of Saturn, you can only go till -6. So you can write s of -6, that essentially is equals to s. If you go any more than that, you're gonna get into a index error. Any question in this? All right. That brings to the next important operation called slicing, or also known as substring. You can also extract a substring from a string. Suppose you have a big string, s equals to universe. Actually, let me just use this real quick. Suppose you have a string called universe. And you want to obtain a substring from this, which let's say is this substring. Okay. And you have indexes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, and 7. Then what you can do is you can use the same syntax. If this is string s, you can write s equal s of, put a colon in between and just say this is the beginning index, whatever you want to begin with. So start. And this is whatever you want to get to +1. Okay. So when you have a range here, let's say s of x comma y, x colon y, this is inclusive and this is excluded. So you will go to y minus 1 essentially. So if you want to obtain this, then you will have to write s of 1 colon 5. And you'll get the string from 1 to 4. This exclusion of the right range is going to be consistent in Python. Okay. The only exception was, there was an exception in the last assignment in which you use the rand int function, which gave you the range till that number, the maximum range. Otherwise, this will always be excluded in every single case. So let's look at this as of 1 to, or as of 2 to 5, and you get if, or sorry, 1 to 5. It also works from the reverse. So you can say, if you want to, let's say this is -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. You can say minus s of -5 to -2. Then you will get VER, and -2 will not be included. It will go till -3. So that way you can generate the slices. Now, important thing, when you generate the slices, the original string does not change. That's always the case. This slicing operation and indexing operation generates a new string that you can use for whatever you want to do. So you can write in this, for example, in this case, you can write s1 equals to that. So s1 will become the new string, sorry, and s remains the original string, what it was. Okay, so this essentially the original string will never change. I'm going to give you maybe a minute to try these two things. And then we'll solve a couple of problems. All right, let's get started. I'm gonna get rid of this and let me start a new module, and let's just call this string1.py. Okay, let's solve some problems to get a feel of this thing. Okay, the problem number one is going to be I'm going to call this initials. You need to write a function which takes in first name, last name, and it returns initials. So if I pass, let's say two initials, if I pass, let's say uh, Frodo and Baggins, those are the two, let's say, strings, then this should generate FB as an answer. That's the initials of Frodo Baggins. Suppose I want to do that. I want to write a function to do that. You can try this, and whatever your answers are, you can post them in Discord.
Himanshu, could you repeat what is the question? What is the function?
So you have a function which takes two strings as argument. These strings are first name and last name, and it generates the initials, and it returns a new string which is
Okay.
initial. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Anybody? Okay, yeah, we're getting the answers. Okay, so we have first name and last name. Essentially, what we need to do is we need to obtain the first characters of each, and we need to concatenate those, right? So suppose you have a name, Frodo, and F name, and then you have a L name as Baggins. Then what you need to do is you need to obtain this Frodo F here, B here, and then you need to concatenate these two. Now, how can I obtain the first character of this string? I can write S of 0. Similarly, how can I obtain the suppose, let's call this F and let's call this L. So F of 0 plus L of 0. Right? Should be pretty straightforward, should not be very complicated. So you can just write return F name of 0 plus L name of 0. Okay. Once again, should not be very hard. And all right, let's look at the next problem. Okay. This next problem is something like this. Okay. So given a string of length 6, split the string, the split. So insert a hyphen in the middle. Now, once again, the string is of length 6. So I can say insert so if I let's say call this function, I hope the spelling is correct, but yeah, if I pass the function, let's say orange, then essentially this should return a string of this type. Okay, so given a string of length 6, insert a hyphen in between. Try this problem, and if you are done, you can post the solution on Discord. Anybody? Might not work. Yeah, that will work. Yes. So suppose you have a string S, which is, let's say, orange, and you want to split it in half and then insert a hyphen in between, right? So essentially you need to obtain this slice, then you need to obtain this slice, and you need to put a plus in between, right? So this is the index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So how can we obtain the first 3 characters? We can write 0, 2, 3. That will give us 0, 1, 2. And then we can write 0, 3, 2, 7, sorry, 6 to get the answer. And that will give you the answer. Now, when you're writing slicing like this, okay, then you'll probably don't, sorry, like this. You probably don't know the last index and you don't want to compute it either, right? So what can you do? Similarly, the very first index, I mean, when you're writing 0, there's probably not a point to say, okay, I want to start at 0. So in slicing operation, if you want to start from 0, or if you want to go all the way till end, then you can skip that particular number. You can write this as :3. This means first 3 elements. And this one you can write as 3 2, like this. Means start to from the index 3 all the way to n. You don't have to specify those ranges. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say return this of 3 plus s of 3 to that. Let's try this out. What did I do? Oh, I just added it back. I need to insert a hyphen in between. So let's insert the hyphen here. Let's run this and you get the hyphen inserted in between. So we're starting to play with the strings somewhat. let's make it a generic case. Okay, suppose I'm going to say, given a string of even length, insert a hyphen in the middle. Okay, given a string of even length, insert a hyphen in the middle. And let's say the strings are, one is orange and another one is universe. So one second, can you try this problem and see if you can solve it? So we have one solution which probably will not work on Python 3. So, okay, the solutions that you guys are putting, I mean, check, maybe it will only work on Python 2. It probably will not work on Python 3 if you try to run it.
So when you use length of s
Mm-hmm.
divided by 2 and then try to replace the variable with 3,
Right.
it didn't work for me. Say,
Yeah, it will not
type
work for
error,
you because
type error.
type error. Yes, it's going to be a type error. And why is that the case? Is because if you remember, in Python 3, there is a change. If you divide 4 by 2, you get a floating point.
Oh, okay.
And if you, let's say there is a string s, and if you try to see 2.0 of that, you're going to get a type error. And it says the string indexes must be integers. So you have to use.
Double.
Yes, exactly.
I remember now. Yeah. Okay. But anyway. So when the code go through, it didn't tell you exactly what it is, but it tell you that must be integer.
Exactly, yes.
But it didn't tell you what to do.
No, I mean, it does tell you. I mean, actually, it does tell you that the string indices must be integers, right? The indexes within the string can only be integers. That means it will tell you that essentially you're putting something that is not an integer. You need to take care of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have a lot of solutions coming. Okay, that's good. So essentially, let me just quickly do this and we can end the session after that. Let's say you have any string. Let's say you have a string called A, B, C, and D. So the indexes will be 0, 1, 2, 3. The desired output is A, B, and then hyphen C, D. So how can you do that? Suppose this is the string S, you can do len of S. That will give you 4. And if you do len of S by 2, that will give you 2. Right? That's the half. Right? So this, you can call this half. Now if you do half, that will return AB. So then you can just plus and then half of the end, half to the end. So beginning to half, half to the end. You can do that and you'll get the answer. Okay, it might take a little bit to understand like this, doing this like in Python style, but you'll be pretty comfortable once you start solving the problems. All right, assignment. The assignment for this session is to do the all of the string one. Okay. There are 14 problems here. All right, all of these. And once you solve those, you will get a check mark like this. So whoever is done, copy and paste this into the Discord. Just want to make sure that you guys go through this. And it's important. These problems are simple, but I'm telling you to do it because by like in 2 weeks, the course is going to ramp up really quickly from that point onwards. So you should be ready at that point. So keep solving these problems. Okay, so that's the assignment. Any questions before we end the session?
So should we post our codes into Discord or maybe just print screen with all the check marks to show that we did it?
Yeah, just the screenshot, because I think the code is just going to be one-liner. And if anybody has any difficulty, then you can post your code snippet and we can discuss.
I have a question. I just lost. And so now I can catch up. I think.
So the video will be available on YouTube tonight.
So I just keep watch to review, right?
Yeah, you can just review it. And if you still have problems, you can just let me know or let anybody else know on Discord. I think a lot of people are able to solve this, so people should be able to help you.
Yeah, can I say that I downloaded the Tony and downloaded the Python. How they are different? I need to use their both or just separate. I don't know how are they relate.
All right, let me stop the recording first and then we'll talk. Just give me 1 second.